passion.
Some people love Ferraris. I love cannabis.
It's become America's largest cash crop, bigger than corn or tobacco.
I keep my head up.
In prison for 10 years while my kids grew up without a dad.
To grow it. Now it's illegal. It's America's biggest cash crop, marijuana. Welcome to CNN Presents. I'm Bernard Shaw. When we first ran our program on marijuana issues, we told you the U.S. war on marijuana was escalating. Since then, arrests on marijuana charges have gone up again to nearly 600,000 a year, a new record. While U.S. drug enforcement figures don't spell out how much the total crackdown on marijuana costs, some estimates put it as high as $7 billion a year. Well, just what are we getting for our money? This week, Larry Lamont goes underground for a look at what our tax dollars are fighting and whether it's worth the effort. He begins with some people who could easily be your next-door neighbors, pot growers who are profiting from higher times.
You've got water pumps, water heaters, you've got all your tubing, you've got your cups, you've got your perlite. There's just so many facets. The beauty in this system right here is that, I can go into any hardware store in America and build one of these. This isn't something that was specialized equipment that was bought from anybody. This is just anybody can put one of these together.
How should we refer to you?
Special K. And that's just a nickname that some of my friends gave me.
Special K does not want us to identify him. He's one of thousands of enterprising new criminals in the costly war on drugs. A war that ironically has helped make pot growing bigger than ever. Forced indoors and harder to detect, it's become America's largest cash crop, bigger than corn or tobacco, $32 billion a year. Putting it in yearly income terms, tell me about yield and income.
Yeah, I would say something like this, barring absolutely no problems, pest, pestilence, or police, I would say about $30,000.
Another grower uses his marijuana profits to pay his college tuition. His patch is inside his dormitory room at a major university in a large American city.
Working diligently in a year's time, I'd say about 48,000, 50,000, tax-free.
Do you think of it as an illegal act? Are you a bad guy?
I don't think of myself as a bad guy. I'm a quiet type, don't attract much attention, and nothing I grow ever gets smoked by kids or mostly people in the mid-20s.
Why don't you consider yourself a criminal?
Anheuser-Busch? Yeah, does Anheuser-Busch, does Philip Morris, to the tobacco industry, none of this stuff goes to school children. None of this stuff goes to street corners for sales or anything else. This goes to responsible people who, instead of drinking a martini or a scotch after dinner, they like to smoke a joint, in the privacy of their own home.
Still, tobacco and alcohol are legal. Pot is not. Both these growers have typical indoor gardens, small, secretive, and illegal.
I think that there are somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million gardens in the United States.
Ed Rosenthal knows. His Ask Ed column in High Times magazine is read by growers and police coast to coast. Where are they located?
Every county of the United States, they might be on your block. In houses, in barns, attics, garages, basements, spare bedrooms, closets, under the staircase, inside a cabinet, anywhere where a person thinks that they can hide it.
Forced into smaller spaces, growers now are far more productive. High-tech gardens, special lights, cloning, some even without dirt.
They don't grow in soil or anything else. It's a complete soilless mixture. Right now they're in a high phosphorus, low nitrogen mix with a lot of macro and micronutrients, just everything to supplement its needs for its given time.
There is no soil in it.
There's no soil. There's a substrate, and it holds up the root system, and it's called geolite. This one has I think you can see a thinner leaf characteristic. So this one is more a sativa than an indica.
Does that make a difference in flavor?
Definitely a definite difference in flavor, definite difference in taste and smell. There's so many different varieties of it that it's like a wine. There's literally hundreds of flavors of marijuana and different levels of high intensity too. I consider myself a botanist, a horticulturist. I haven't gone to school. I'm all self-taught. Everything you see here is all self-taught.
Why the passion?
Why not the passion? Some people love Ferraris. I love cannabis.
But their passion for growing and the money it brings is tempered by fear. Are you concerned about who you can trust?
Yes, and I try to move around at least once a year. I haven't done that here in a long time, and I probably will before this thing is aired.
He has reason to fear arrest. The penalty for growing pot, even small amounts, can be as harsh as life in prison.
And you always have a dull ache, you know. When are the police going to come? When is, you know, someone going to figure out what's going on? When is it all going to go wrong, you know? When's the boogeyman going to come, you know? And you always, when you're sleeping, if you hear a bump in the night, it's a different lifestyle. You don't really live like other people.
Still ahead on CNN Presents, on the front lines of the war on pot, what is the battle costing you? And is it worth the price?
Sonic technology is used to clean the most coveted diamond in the world.
CNN Presents continues now with Higher Times. Once again, here's Larry Lamott.
Operations 288, copy, same location. Going.
We believe we are winning the war at this point in Kentucky.
Go ahead and light it.
We're definitely saving the people.
It's illegal. That's the basic thing that you have to understand. It's a unique situation here.
Kentucky is a key battlefront in this war, a war to eradicate these plants and to prosecute the people who grow them, a war against marijuana.
Is there any more down there?
You have law enforcement on one side.
What do we have, one plot with 110 plants?
Yes.
The marijuana growers on the other side.
I keep my head up high because I'm proud of what I do.
I would have to say the people that grow, cultivate marijuana, I would have to put them pretty low on the ladder, pretty much close to scum.
These people are the government's drug warriors. People like Jay Souders, a trooper with the Kentucky Highway Patrol. He accepts the risk of battle because he believes marijuana is corroding America's youth.
They get where they think this is the only thing they need. They think as long as they got some dope, they can get by. They don't worry too much about school or doing the right thing or being decent people. Once they get started on the dope, it's all over.
In these forested mountains, more outdoor marijuana is grown than anywhere else in America.
It is a war in this state within the Commonwealth of Kentucky because it is such a pervasive problem.
Ready for fire?
Every summer, men and women from 17 federal, state, and local agencies try to eradicate the weed. Sergeant Shelby Lawson, who coordinates the effort, personifies the attitude that drives his people.
I don't want this marijuana out here available to my kids. I don't want it available to your kids. I don't want it available to anybody's kids. Oh, my goodness.
It takes strong motivation to wage these battles. Just the physical toll is exacting.
It's surrounded on the upper side by a wall of kudzu. I'm telling you, it's bad.
It's very difficult. Very difficult. You have to be in pretty good shape. Each year we have one or two that has to be taken to the emergency room because of the heat exhaustion.
Lawmen are also up against determined growers.
Anytime we come across this wire, we use extreme caution because it could be wired to booby traps. As you can see, they pulled the trees over to avoid aerial detection.
The actual on-site growers are usually the good old boys in the back mountains of Kentucky.
These counties are among the poorest in the nation. Joblessness runs as high as 60%. Some of the locals believe if there were more jobs, poor people wouldn't grow pot.
Well, the ones that's got families to feed, they have to do something, huh? I'd say there'd be a lot of them wouldn't do it if they wouldn't raise it, if they had work to do.
80% of the marijuana that's grown here is being grown here for survival of the winter, to make it through the winter.
Not everyone considers these crime fighters heroes. After all, pot is Kentucky's biggest cash crop. Some locals say the troopers are taking money out of their pockets, while others resent living in a war zone.
To me, they're just like Hitler's Gestapo. There's no difference in them at all. They've got the run of the mill, they've got the guns, they run in on you and taking just kick your door down and just do anything they want to do, and it's legal.
They see it as an intrusion into their territory, you know, into their region, and they don't like that. Again, yeah, before it was moonshine. Now it's marijuana.
This economic dependence on pot, combined with close-knit mountain families, has made it tough on local prosecutors.
It's very, very difficult to obtain a conviction in the rural areas because of the fact that everybody is closely connected.
Sergeant Jim Tipton has been on this battlefield since 1986.
It was not unusual for us to get plots of 20 to 30,000 plants. Today, when you get a plot that's got 100 plants, that's a pretty sizable plot.
2 million plants seized in Kentucky over the past decade. But that's only half the crop. So who's winning the war? Nationwide, after millions of arrests and billions of dollars spent, marijuana use is up among the young.
Can y'all step back, please, if you're not under arrest?
It's still grown across the country, and it's about as easy to buy as a 6-pack of beer.
When we come back, this man claims the war on pot took the life of a woman he loved.
You have caused the death of this lady. For what purpose? A handful of dried up marijuana leaves. That's all it's about.
You know, if Shirley Dorsey, for whatever reasons, committed suicide, well, I'm sorry. I can't feel any remorse because I didn't do anything to her.
CNN Presents continues now with Higher Times. Once again, here's Larry Lamott.
I'll stand by my man, she said, behind the prison wall. America's own prisoners of war. Indeed, we do stand tall.
Doris Gore lost her sons Gary and Steve Tucker to America's marijuana war.
The brothers turned and hugged.
She wrote a poem last year after both were sent to prison.
Do not despair, my mother. Try not to be so sad. You know we're just the victims of America gone mad.
Has America gone mad? Critics say yes, accusing the government of blindly wrecking lives in the anti-pot frenzy. The Tuckers are among thousands of Americans claiming they are not criminals, only victims.
We had a dream to operate our own business, be our own bosses.
Before prison, they sold hydroponic equipment in a suburban Atlanta store called Southern Lights, equipment used to grow plants indoors. Most hardware stores carry this kind of gear.
Our store was a typical garden store, with the exception of the fact that we specialized in hydroponics. We had tomatoes growing, beans, squash, those types of supplies.
But the Tucker store caught the eye of the law. It had become popular with pot growers.
We got a call from DEA officer one morning that they wanted permission for them to install surveillance cameras in our store. We refused. We didn't believe it was right to spy on people, because by far most of our customers were legitimate customers buying our equipment for legitimate needs.
And we did set up a surveillance, just a normal, everyday, old-fashioned police technique to see who was going into the store.
The DEA, when we refused to let them install cameras in our store, they told us they were going to shut us down and put us in prison.
The Drug Enforcement Administration in Atlanta spent over $1 million in a massive investigation, casing the store, following customers home, even going through their garbage.
You get a shot of this.
It led to more than 70 indoor marijuana growers.
Under here is a reservoir. The operation runs strictly by itself on timers.
The DEA simply made this out to be, you would have thought it was some kind of Al Capone syndicate, you know, the way they acted.
Is a receipt from Southern Lights and Hydroponics.
Selling hydroponic equipment is not illegal, but were the Tuckers somehow involved in growing marijuana?
The Tuckers were intimately and personally involved not only in the selling of the equipment, but specifically providing information to customers on how to grow marijuana.
That's absolutely outrageous.
Gary Tucker, a decorated Vietnam vet with no previous criminal record, says that's not true.
If a customer came in and blatantly told us that he wanted to grow marijuana, then we'd ask him to leave the store.
Eventually, the DEA raided the Tuckers' homes.
The government took our house, our business, our vehicles, and all our monies. They immediately bankrupted us.
But the DEA found nothing.
The Drug Enforcement Administration did not discover any actual marijuana at the Tuckers' home, nor in their store.
By the use of these...
Some of the Tuckers' customers investigated by the DEA said the Tuckers did not know about their home pot gardens. One was Paul Westmoreland, in prison for the marijuana he grew.
When the DEA called me into their office the day I pled guilty, once again, I told them the Tuckers knew absolutely nothing about what I was doing. I didn't know the Tuckers. They were trying to lead me into saying that, yes, the Tuckers gave me information about growing marijuana. Well, the clear message was if I changed my story, they would knock some time off of my sentence.
Westmoreland's testimony was not allowed in court, but some other growers who shopped at the Tucker store did testify against them in exchange for sharply reduced sentences. They stated under oath that the Tuckers gave them growing advice and marijuana seeds. For that, Gary, his wife Joanne, and Steve, a father of two, got mandatory prison sentences of 10 to 16 years each, with no parole.
In choosing to get actively involved in a criminal activity, they put themselves in jeopardy, and they have received a prescribed sentence, which is certainly fair.
No, but that would be another place that
Julie Stewart says it's not fair for thousands of Americans. She founded a group called Families Against Mandatory Minimums after her brother was sentenced to 5 years in prison without parole for growing.
Well, the sentences for marijuana defendants are longer than that for manslaughter. The average marijuana defendant serves 4 years, just over 4 years in prison, and the average manslaughter is 12 months, which is 1 year.
And what do you feel about that?
I think it's ridiculous.
I try hard and I can't figure how society has benefited from what's been done. I've never in my entire life committed a crime, and yet here I am in prison for 10 years while my family struggles and my kids grow up without a dad.
Mandatory minimum sentences, one legal issue. The case of Byron Statemate raises another.
You have caused the death of this lady for what purpose? A handful of dried up marijuana leaves. That's all it's about. A handful of dried herb leaves.
Byron Statemate blames the government for the death of his common-law wife, Shirley Dorsey. Sympathizers say she is a martyr in America's failing war on pot.
I searched all over. I went down by the pond and I couldn't find her. I walked here and I saw her body lying there. At this point, I saw it. And she had fallen here. I find that she had fired a bullet in her chest.
On April 1st, 1991, Shirley Dorsey took her own life rather than testify against Byron Staymate. He was caught growing marijuana for her to use as a painkiller.
I came back in the house from finding her body. I saw these papers she had made and put out for me.
The papers were subpoenas for Shirley to testify from the district attorney in Placerville, California.
She told me after she received the first one, let them send all they want. I will never testify against you in court. You're too important to me. I will not do this. I will die first.
He's a criminal.
Deputy DA Eric Schluter prosecuted the case. Police had raided the couple's home and found 160 young marijuana plants.
He intentionally went out and violated the laws of the state of California. Byron Staymate was arrested for cultivation of marijuana and possession of marijuana for sale.
Staymate says he grew the plants to make marijuana butter. Shirley used it to help ease her back pain from an auto accident.
It was helping her. There's no question about that.
The district attorney says Byron had too many plants for personal use, and he wasn't swayed by Staymate's background, a retired mechanical engineer with the Federal Aviation Administration. Throughout his 75 years, Byron had never so much as had a speeding ticket.
I've never harmed society in any way.
You broke the law with marijuana?
I don't consider that being a criminal, and I'm supporting a better quality of life for me and my wife.
A drug task force seized the elderly couple's property. Nearly $200,000 worth of Byron stocks and bonds were promptly confiscated and sold, even before a fair trial. Under the nation's drug laws, the county could keep most of Byron's assets if he was found guilty of selling marijuana. Documents show the county had already budgeted the money, hoping to buy new bomb squad equipment and police cars. But there was one major problem. The government didn't have a case for selling pot.
To prosecute somebody on sales, you have to have either somebody see the sale or somebody who bought from Mr. Staymate. We had neither one.
That was not surprising to Tom Daly, publisher of the local paper, who investigated the case.
I turned every rock that you could possibly turn over, including the sheriffs. And on the record and off the record, they told me that there was not a shred of evidence that this man was dealing to anybody, ever.
Byron served 4 months in jail for growing marijuana. The courts later gave his money back, but they kept his house. After legal fees, he was almost bankrupt. Millions of dollars of property and assets like Byron Staymate's are seized every year.
The police saw assets, and they targeted the people because of those assets.
Brenda Grantlin, one of Staymate's attorneys, represents a national organization concerned with forfeiture cases.
That 70 to 80% of the victims of forfeiture were never charged with any crime. It's not necessary that you're guilty of anything before your property can be seized. Byron's case is one of the worst examples of a tragedy. You know, here's an old couple and a frail individual who is forced to suicide by just the relentless torment that forfeiture puts you through.
You know, if Shirley Dorsey, for whatever reasons, committed suicide, I'm sorry. I can't feel any remorse because I didn't do anything to her.
I hate to think of the period where she went through such depression and fear that she had to end her life. Imagine, I worked all my life for someone to come along, charge us with a crime which would totally destroy our lives.
I get to smoking and be smoking constantly.
When CNN Presents continues, they claim they smoke pot for medical reasons.
It helps the pain go away. It helps my mind, take my mind off the pain.
The government considers them criminals.
We have a standard in this country for medicines. That's not it.
Should pot be available at your pharmacy? CNN CNN Presents, a weekly news magazine, continues now with Higher Times. Once again, here's Bernard Shaw.
Since we first broadcast Higher Times, a lot has happened concerning the medical use of marijuana. In November, voters in California and Arizona supported by large margins measures relaxing restrictions on pot for sick people. But marijuana is still illegal under federal law. President Clinton's drug policy director, retired Army General Barry McCaffrey, says the votes send a disastrous message to young people. He predicts increased abuse of all illegal drugs, not just marijuana, because of the new laws. The votes underscore the ongoing national debate on the subject. Is marijuana a medicine? And what of the people who claim to smoke pot to relieve pain and suffering? Should they be arrested? We begin our story at the controversial Cannabis Buyers Club in San Francisco. California's Attorney General shut it down some months after our visit. But that was before California voters approved medical marijuana. Once again, here's Larry Lamont with some of the last television footage shot at the Buyers Club.
I used to go through those a week, man, by myself. I'd get the smoking and be smoking constantly. Bowl after bowl after bowl after
These people say they are sick.
Yeah, that's what everybody does. Smell them all, but buy the best.
What do we have in the goodie section?
This is their sanctuary, the Cannabis Buyers Club in San Francisco. More than 3,000 members buy and smoke high-grade marijuana. They say they do it for good reason.
It helps the pain go away. It helps my mind, take my mind off the pain.
The membership requirement is tough. A doctor must certify that applicants are sick or dying. This club is ground zero, the heart of a national movement to legalize marijuana for people with various illnesses like cancer, AIDS, glaucoma, and multiple sclerosis.
Essentially, everyone here wants to live. If you don't want to live, we don't want you here. But I know that you do.
Dennis Perrone is the founder.
Like Rosa Parks, I'm not going to get in the back of the bus and wait to see my friends die while you guys make a decision whether this is a good drug or a bad drug.
Doctors argue about it.
Marijuana will never be used as a medicine.
There are many people out there who are suffering because they are being denied this substance.
It has too many chemicals, it's too unstable, it's too unpredictable.
So why not find out whether there are medical benefits to marijuana? Renowned AIDS researcher Dr. Donald Abrams wanted to. He proposed a pilot study. It was okayed by the FDA, then killed by the final authority, the government's National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA.
We tried hard to find a reason to provide the resource, but the study was flawed, and I couldn't justify using our scarce resources for a study that I knew wasn't going to show what it said it was going to show.
But how could Dr. Abrams foul up something as basic as a pilot study proposal? He's written up to 50 other clinical trials. Some of those led to FDA-approved treatments for AIDS patients.
I believe that NIDA was really using science as an excuse for the underlying political issue that will not allow them to supply marijuana to a study that may show it has medical benefit.
NIDA believes pot is dangerous. So how could it ever approve medical marijuana? In fact, NIDA's first director says medical marijuana is a front for the movement to legalize all pot.
The way they want to do that is to get sick medical patients smoking marijuana on television and in the public mind as a way of essentially normalizing, destigmatizing marijuana use. That's their strategy.
No, let me try an eighth of the A+. Yeah.
Kevin Gass, a successful San Francisco hotel executive, knows what his own experience shows. Like all the other Buyers Club members, he's ill, HIV positive.
Great, thank you. Bye-bye. Basically, anything I do from brushing my teeth to just turning on the water makes me retch. And that's extremely painful because sometimes it goes on for 15 minutes where I just can't catch my breath. Okay, let go.
Yet Kevin is leading a fairly normal life because he's found a way to ease the nausea and pain, marijuana.
It really helps kind of tame me down and, of course, stimulate the appetite.
Critics say people like Kevin should be using a legal drug called Marinol.
The active ingredient, the THC part of marijuana, is available in pills now for AIDS patients, and it does relieve age wasting.
Kevin did try Marinol.
It was just very scary because it was so intense and it came on so quickly. I mean, it's basically incapacitated me. I could not do anything. I could barely hold a conversation.
So Kevin smoked pot during the first 2 years of his illness, stayed productive, and received more job promotions than at any other time in his career.
Yeah. Okay, good. Hop back up here. How much nausea have you had?
Kevin's doctor, Marcus Conant, recommends pot for many of his 3,000 AIDS patients.
What we're talking about is using a drug that is safe and effective in people who have a serious, life-threatening disease to improve the quality of their life.
We have a standard in this country for medicines. That's not it. It's not that a doctor feels that it's a good idea. It's that it meets a standard and goes through the FDA and all the procedures that are needed.
But Dr. Conant is not acting in isolation. A 1990 Harvard survey of cancer specialists in America revealed almost half of them advised their patients to smoke pot for relief of nausea and pain. In San Francisco, Dr. Conant even tells his patients where to get it.
And where is that? And that's the Buyers Club, which is down on Market Street.
Hi, can I see your card, please? Come on in. Thanks, go ahead.
I think we gotta go for the best stuff for you today.
I think you're right.
Triple A green, California green.
Medical grade, definitely.
I have personally lost 200 friends, close friends, who have died agonizing deaths. Marijuana helped many of them, and I'm glad, because I know this works for them and is being denied from them for purely political purposes. And they are using patients, my friends, as pawns on this phony war on marijuana.
There are dozens of other underground clubs across America.
I mean, you should have anything available that will help anyone that's ill. I don't care what it is. You should have more than one choice.
If it had any other name besides marijuana, it'd be totally legal.
In 1988, after 2 years of hearings, a law judge for the Drug Enforcement Administration recommended medical marijuana be legalized. The DEA overruled him.
There's no way marijuana or any other smoked leaf or product like that will ever be a medicine in the United States or any place in the developed world.
We are at war with our own people, and it's not right. Now we are at war with sick people, and that's really not right.
Just days ago, the Clinton administration launched a full frontal assault on the California and Arizona medical marijuana initiatives. The campaign offers a blunt reminder to doctors who recommend pot. Under federal law, they could lose their prescription writing privileges or even face criminal charges.
Here's what we're worried about. This is not a medical proposition. This is the legalization of drugs that we're concerned about.
Our healthcare professionals need to understand that federal law has not changed, that it continues to be illegal in the United States to prescribe marijuana.
U.S. attorneys in both states will continue to review cases for prosecution, and DEA officials will review cases, as they have, to determine whether to revoke the registration of any physician who recommends or prescribes so-called Schedule I controlled substances.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Some doctors object to the threats. They say the government has no business interfering in the doctor-patient relationship. Also, the American Medical Association is calling for federal funding to find out once and for all whether pot can help sick people.
Coming up on CNN Presents, we'll take you to a city where taxpayer money helps fund pot shops.
We don't think arresting people and putting them in jail on the level of marijuana doesn't help anybody.
CNN Presents continues now with Higher Times. Once again, here's Larry Lamott.
pleasant summer afternoon on a street in Amsterdam. Playful children. Dinner with friends. And right next door, people smoking marijuana at the neighborhood coffee shop.
This is the real Dutch grass. The best.
Nobody seems to mind.
It's quite normal for Amsterdam, for Holland. I think it's no, why not?
Soms. Smokers like Eric Janssen symbolize the Netherlands' open approach to marijuana and hashish. Technically illegal, the government does not prosecute users. The antithesis of the drug policy of most countries. Janssen is a successful contractor who restores old houses. He finds marijuana helpful, not harmful.
During the daytime when I'm working, I don't smoke. It's relaxing. When the job's done, then you can relax. I don't drink that much. I can't handle alcohol because I get a hangover, and I barely drink.
People buy in places called coffee shops.
Yeah, if you want to know what they sell in here, it's all kinds of marijuana, grass, or hashish.
The government believes if sales can be contained in safe, regulated places, users will not move on to more dangerous drugs like heroin and cocaine. Dutch Health Minister Els Borst.
Our Dutch policy is based on the principle that cannabis is not very damaging to health.
Her U.S. equivalent, Donna Shalala.
Marijuana is illegal. Marijuana is dangerous. Marijuana is unhealthy. And marijuana is wrong.
So I think nicotine and alcohol are far more dangerous to your health.
U.S. policymakers firmly believe marijuana leads to harder drugs.
It is a gateway drug.
Joseph Califano, former U.S. Health Secretary, now runs a think tank on drug and addiction issues.
If you're 12 to 17-year-old and you smoke marijuana, you're 85 times more likely to use heroin or cocaine than an individual who does not smoke marijuana.
Nonsense.
University of Amsterdam researcher Peter Cohan has been tracking marijuana use in that city for nearly a decade.
According to our epidemiological data, marijuana is not a gateway drug at all.
Cohan says only 5% of all cannabis users also use cocaine. Even fewer use heroin. And what about concerns pot leads to criminal behavior?
Here are a lot of cafes where you can buy some marijuana. They are not regular coffee shops.
Rotterdam police drugs expert Jaap de Vlieger.
Marijuana gives no any problem at all. Marijuana, the coffee shops particular, give no more troubles than a regular cafe.
De Vlieger regularly talks to young people to see what kind of drugs they are using. This night he visits a coffee shop.
What do you smoke at the moment?
Skunk.
Skunk?
Yeah.
What kind of skunk?
He chats with Ron Nieleman.
5 minutes ago, I talked with a policeman. I think that's hard to understand for people in America.
He holds down a good job at the Technical University at Delft, helping arrange postgraduate courses and lectures. His supervisors praise his work. If he lived in the United States, his career could be ruined by a marijuana arrest. Former U.S. drug czar Lee Brown.
The best way not to get arrested is don't grow, sell, or possess marijuana.
Dutch organized crime investigator Henk Janssen.
We don't think arresting people and put them in jail on the level of marijuana doesn't help anybody.
We don't want to do that in America. So the lesson is very clear. Do not attempt to duplicate what happens in countries such as the Netherlands. I visited their park and I watched their young people laying around looking like zombies.
The misconception people have is that because we have decriminalized the personal use of small amounts of marijuana, that has caused an enormous number of marijuana addicts in this country, and that is absolutely not the case.
So is the policy working? The Dutch say yes. Most people briefly experiment with the drug, then stop. If the Dutch pot policy is so successful, why change it? The government is closing down coffee shops, nearly 200 in the past year, more than 100 in Amsterdam alone.
I think we have too many coffee shops at the moment, and if you have too many, there's always a danger that these coffee shops also start dealing in other things than cannabis, maybe hard drugs.
This tightening up was prompted, among other things, by an increase in cannabis use by young people, an increase also found in other parts of Europe and the United States.
Here we have the normal, very famous though, NL5 haze.
But the Netherlands hasn't tightened up on those who grow marijuana seeds. That remains legal. Alan Drunker's company sells millions of dollars worth of high-potency seeds every year.
This is greenhouse number 1. This is greenhouse number 2. This is our biggest greenhouse, greenhouse number 3.
They end up in pot gardens around the world, including the United States, whose government wages one of the world's fiercest wars against marijuana.
This is ridiculous. This is sicko. Your country has a problem. Your country has a drug problem. A drug war on people. Not on the drugs, because you only have more people who have problems with drugs. More violence. It's terrible. Makes a Dutchman sad. I'm sorry.
The sight of this Dutch coffee shop would make some Americans cringe. It's in the small town of Bussum. At the Pyramid Coffee Shop, the local government helps sell marijuana to its young people. The operation is backed by $100,000 of taxpayer money in the form of a loan from the city. A schoolmaster heads the foundation which runs the place. Locals concluded their young people were the main smokers in town. Rather than stop them, they decided to keep watch over them. The mayor says this kind of control keeps hard drugs out.
Because we have only one selling point, and from that selling point we can have a good eye on how the drugs world is doing.
The Dutch policy sees experimentation with drugs as a normal part of growing up. Even the health minister admits she smoked pot and inhaled.
I've tried it once. Yes, I didn't like it at all, so I stopped after that one. A joint, it's called, yes. Together with my husband, he didn't like it either. But that's something you can say in this country and still stay on as a Minister of Health.
According to the FBI, one person in the United States is arrested on marijuana charges every 54 seconds. And in the time you've been watching this program, according to some estimates, the government has spent nearly $800,000 in the war on pot. Yet, pot smoking is on the rise among young people. Join us each week at this time for a look beyond the headlines at the most compelling stories of our time. I'm Bernard Shaw, and this is CNN Presents.
To purchase a transcript or video copy of this program, please call 1-800-CNN-NEWS. CNN transcripts are available online from LexisNexis. Call 1-800-227-4908.
Closed captioning was provided by Bell Atlantic, the heart of communication.